listening to Make It, a podcast by Bonsai Creative that helps creatives in film get where they're going faster by sharing the advice, knowledge, and insights of professional creatives across the film industry. I'm your host, Chris Barkley, and with me today is my good friend and Make It podcast co-host, Nicholas Buggs. Hello, Chris here with another episode of the Make It podcast, and this is an Indie Talk week, and that means I have my good friend and co-founder with me, Nicholas Buggs. Nick, say hello.
Yes, sir. What's going on, man? It's good to see you.
Good to see you as well. I almost said that means it's an Indie Talk finally.
Basically.
We have not been on the mic for a long time, and a lot's going on in the world. And in honor of 8.5% inflation in March,
oh, geez,
I am drinking this wine here. You say, well, how could a wine? That's delicious.
That's a deep sip.
How can this wine be in honor of inflation? And you see here, I'm drinking the Wabi Sabi right here. Very tasty, out of Austria.
Nice.
Yes. It is the Love and Passion Red. It's a 2020 varietal from Weinviertel, which is in the northeast or northeastern area of Austria. And why Austria? Because it was the Austrian economists who told us that we would be in this inflationary situation. So many centuries ago. And so in honor of the inflation, I have selected a Austrian wine, red wine, to sip on. And it is so delicious. And I will be sipping on it for the duration of our conversation today.
Well, you're going to have to slow sip. So that wasn't a deep pour, bro.
Yeah.
So
I probably will finish the bottle in this conversation.
There you go.
Just to just to lay my financial head on a pillow. But I won't complain. The markets were up today. Great. Fantastic.
Yeah, well, I'll be sipping on this tea in this big old cup I got going on here.
That's a giant mug. I like when have you ever had a gift from someone? I could just stop there and just ask you that, but I'll keep going. Have you had a gift from someone that came from a pottery shop where they went and made you a mug?
Yes.
Yeah. Like they bake it and then there's a special word for it.
Kiln.
They kiln it, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And whenever they do that,
killing it,
it's always a soup bowl and not a coffee mug.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
The coffee mug is too hard. It's too hard to make in that size. They got to make it larger, It's all part of the plan. It's like when the kids make those necklaces.
Yeah.
With the super huge beads.
Yeah.
Oh man. I just got sad for a second. I'm like, wait a second. Do they even do that anymore? The kids make bead necklaces anymore.
I was given a big mug and it was rainbow colored and said some words on it, but it was all scribbly lettered, like Snoopy wrote it or something.
Right. It probably said Wabi Sabi or something on it.
Yeah, maybe so. And I just, I brought the person over and I showed them my cabinet and I said, I didn't say anything. I just pointed, look, all my dishes are white. I just can't figure out how this fits into I love the gift. I can't figure out how it fits in to my feng shui here.
You just tell them you're a little bit OCD. That's what it is. It's I just can't. I would love to.
Right.
I would love to, but it's just.
I would. Yeah. Yeah.
Got knocked 3 times.
I love the gift. I would love to accept this. But if I put it in my cupboard, I will have to put it on top of an existing mug. That's how big it is.
Right.
And I can't look at that every day when I come in to the kitchen for breakfast. I can't do that. If I look up and see it,
OCD.
Because my cabinets are glass where you can see inside. If I see that, then what? The day's ruined?
Whoa, so that's difficult to say to somebody, right? Thanks for the mug. But looking at it ruins my day. Like I just
I see your gift, I think of you, and now my day is ruined.
Exactly. It sucks. No.
Yeah, it sucks. Do that. What doesn't suck is our good friends over at the Arts and Business Council.
ABC.
Mm-hmm. And they brought us in along with the wonderful Courtney Sabatini and the incredibly gifted and intelligent Nick Barnes. And they had us on a workshop. And we got to do something we love to do, which is to answer questions from independent creatives. And, Nick is there as an agent and he works for UTA. And Courtney's there as a lawyer, entertainment lawyer, both very, very valuable. But one of the things that we bring to the table is that we're a boots on the ground, independent creative, branding and marketing firm, executive producers and independent film, producers and independent film, right? And then we also have the benefit of talking to just so many creatives across the world about their journey in independent film and get to learn from them. It's such a blessing. So we did that. And the interesting thing about a panel is that when you have the moderator plus the guest plus 4 people in a workshop, an hour and a half seems like a long time. It's really not. I mean, I think we might have answered maybe as a group, we might have answered 4 to 7 guest questions. There was like 60, 70 people on the call. And because it was virtual panel. I thought what we would do today is answer some of the questions from the workshop that we just didn't get to address, but we saw in the chat, we knew were like really interesting, great questions that people would get a lot out of. And because most of the attendees were independent filmmakers, I thought, well, what the heck, Nick? Let's get on here and let's answer some of these questions. Are you cool with that?
I'm game. I am.
All right, good. Let's hop into this thing. So
let's do this.
Let's do it. Okay. Let's start with this one. And I wish we had the names of the people who submitted these. So
can I just say that the first one was from Alfalfa?
Yeah, maybe we'll get them eventually. But the first question was, I'd like to know how to go about placing a completed film with a streaming service that pays. And Nick, I would love to just contextualize this a little bit and then let you hop in if that's cool.
Go for it, man. This is how we did it on the panel too, right? It's like,
exactly.
You tee it up.
So, I mean, there's a couple of keywords here. So one is placing. The word placing is an interesting choice of words. And then streaming service that pays is an interesting qualifier as well. So,
yep.
So, and there's a few things in this question. So there's this concept of negative pickups, and that's kind of an old term, but negative pickups is basically the Hollywood term for when a studio buys an independent film after its completion or before principal photography. And the whole thing got a little bit squirrely, because what a studio would do was they would open up a production company for the sole purpose of producing that one film. And they would funnel sort of through the back door. They would funnel the money to sort of bankroll this company that was going to make this film. And the reason they did that is so that you could get away with not paying union rates, basically. So it's a way to make your film less expensive, get content for your distribution stream, and not pay exorbitant union fees or market union fees for crew and cast, et cetera. Now, SAG's a little bit more flexible when it comes to like the budget level and working union, non-union. But for like the crew and IATSE, because these studios are signatories, they're really not allowed to like go outside the union. Right, Nick? So that's kind of a way to trick the system or game the system. And 2 newsletters ago, I wrote a commentary about this in our biweekly newsletter, Industry Insights, which everyone should subscribe to. It's really awesome. But I wrote a commentary about this, that, you know, the squeeze that's happening to independent filmmakers is caused by ourselves, and then our desire, obviously, to survive, which is fine and real. Like, we should want to get paid what we're worth. We should want a safe set, which is what IATSE would provide, for example, or what a guild would provide for in the most case. Now, the Alec Baldwin thing with Rust is a you know, an outlier, but in general, you know, when you're on an indie film, you don't have any of those protections, right? If you're working non-union, we want that, but at the same time, that also can push down and slow down the progress and opportunities that independent filmmakers have to sell their movies and to make an affordable movie, or a movie that equity investors would feel they have a decent chance of profiting from, you know, in the future. So that's negative pickups. Then there's false negative pickup, right, where the studio's funneling the money. That's just a game, right? And then there's like, just when you see like a post from like Hollywood Reporter or Variety that says blah, 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 set to star in, and it's like, what is this movie? That's just like an announcement of a pickup. And a pickup is like where a mid-major or a mini-major is going to pick you up and they're going to put you into a services deal, right? And we've talked a lot about services deals over the years. Nick, I think you understand what I'm talking about here. And so when you say placed, the first thing to understand is that a streamer that's major is a studio. I mean, that's where we are right now. So they are a studio. So if you want to be placed at a major studio, it's good to have sort of that commitment in place in pre-production. So right before principal photography. If you don't, then you can try to sell it in post. Again, you might end up in that mini major category then. And then we look at paid. Well, you know, the big studio streamer, let's just use Netflix, because we always use Netflix the way that everyone uses McDonald's when they're talking about fast food conglomerates. Right. So Netflix will pay you what it costs to make the film plus a little to put in your pocket, right? Pay back your investors, make some money, make the next film. That's really awesome. I mean, I think that's great because it keeps you in the business, right? But make no mistake, that's like a placement at a studio. You don't get any rights after that. You don't get any, there's no residual payments. There's no, you know, they own it, lock, stock, and barrel. That's what it is. And when you go through, let's say, a mini major, like I said, and you get a services deal, it's going to be put out everywhere movies stream, but you're not getting money up front. You might get an MG, minimum guarantee of like 25 grand, 50 grand, maybe 100 grand, but usually you're getting nothing. Usually you owe them money to distribute, but those also pay. Like, they pay every quarter. You're going to get a check. As long as your movie's good and it's in those places, you're going to get a check. So, you know, I think I wanted to contextualize it before I actually answer the first part of the question. So I'll stop there. That's kind of the context of it. Nick, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah. So, the question was really, was asking about a completed film, right? So I think, again, in the context of things, at that point, it can be a challenge, right? Your challenge is much bigger if you're now trying to place a completed film. When you ask the question about streamers, and of course, so there's the context of streamers, and then you have within that, there's a subset, which is what they're getting at, which is a streamer that pays, right? So you have a completed film looking for a streamer that pays. Of course, they did not provide, the person asking the question didn't say pays what, right? So, because like you said, there's a lot of streamers out there that pay, but how much they pay is really the question, right? And then how much they pay is also, or how much a filmmaker is interested in the streamer paying is also related to how much that filmmaker invested other people's money in making the film, right? So again, you make your feature film, we have friends who've done this, made a feature film for $5,000 to $10,000, right? So a streamer that pays, right, and pays you out $100 a month, say $300 a quarter, $1,200 a year, that might be great. Right? That might be spot on for you. You make your money back in the next couple of years. It all works itself out. But if you're spending $200,000 to $500,000 to $750,000 on your film, that trickle doesn't really help. So, I think really to get back to that question, it's like it's some of the same things we would have said at the beginning of your film, before you get into production. Really is, have you identified the audience for your specific film? And have you identified the distributors and the streamers that work in that market?
Yeah.
So
let me hop in on that before I forget. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's really huge, because what happens is if the buyer knows the audience right away, like let's say you have a Marvel film. So that audience is established. They know who they're going to sell to. They know exactly how it's going to perform.
Yep,
all that
exactly.
Stuff. If you go in and you pitch your movie, let's say in pre-production, like you're trying to sell it in advance, you've got a casting director, you've got your whole shot list, you've got all your locations, your producers are on board, obviously. You've got your shooting schedule, you got your budget, you're ready to pitch it. You're pitching this thing and they don't want to buy it. It's because they haven't identified the audience. And they view your film as a film that needs to find its audience. And that's movie code for, let's put this thing out there into the world in the least expensive, most efficient way, meaning a services deal through some Bitmax aggregator, and see if it finds an audience. And famously, this happened with Family Guy, and it happened with, what's the other one that got canceled and came back and had a huge following?
American Dad.
No, Breaking Bad was great.
American Dad.
Oh, American Dad. I don't know if it was American Dad, but it was Family Guy and one other. But those were shows that got canceled, got picked up by another broadcast channel, found an audience, and then were repurchased by the original buyer. So a lot of times, it's not an issue of, it's not like this thing where it's like, I found my audience. It's also about, in the pitch, did you convince the buyer that you found your audience?
Yeah, I think that's it. It's the research that has to be done really, I guess, at any level, because again, some filmmakers are trying to sell, per the question, a completed film, right? But that's it. So it's finding the appropriate distributor or streaming service, right? And I say or because in a lot of cases, the streamers deal, B2B, right? It's business to business. So they'll work with distributors, not necessarily independent or individual filmmakers. Some do, right? You can post your stuff to a streaming service. The other part that, like we talked about before, that pays, that's the most challenging part of it, because I think all of them pay. That's right. That's in their terms and conditions, right? There's T's and C's. They will pay, but it depends on how they pay. So do they pay per view? Do they pay based off an ad basis? Do they pay based off of how much of your film was watched? Do they pay based off of cumulative number of hours during the quarter? Or do they pay based off of how much your film was watched relative to everything else that they have within their portfolio? Mm-hmm. So they all pay. And then the other kind of caveat to this is, it's difficult to say that your film will receive pay, because the main factor here is, well, how good is your film?
Right.
Right. So that's a piece of the puzzle, right? It's not a, 1 + 1 = 2, right? I have film, I found distributor, I make money back.
Yeah.
That's not the way that it works. So again, it's getting into what's your audience? Does the streaming service that you've identified market to that audience? Do you have a good, and let's say great film that will actually get to that audience? Are you doing stuff outside of the distribution, outside of the streamer to activate that audience? And then what is the pay model that streamer uses to pay you back? All of these are factors in basically answering that very difficult question.
Right. And we've answered the why, we've answered the what. I want to get to what they asked, which was the how. And the how is that you start in pre-production. It's really good to know as early as possible if you have a compelling market fit for any streamer. And so what's your cast? Get a great casting director. That some of the roles in independent film are not created equal. And I think you need a great line producer. I think you need a director or writer-director that has something to say, that understands nuance, the little things. And I think you need a great casting director. Because if you want to sell in pre-pro, you're going to have to walk to a bank or a streamer or whoever funds your movie or gets it made, because we're talking about placing it at a streamer that pays. So if we imply pays big, they're probably going to fund your movie based on their feeling on the market fit of it and how it can turn out and the people involved and can execute. So the how is start with those letters of intent, get those cast commitments in place. Okay? Get executors in place and have a hell of a pitch ready to go. Because you want to find out before you shoot the film what the market viability of your movie is. And you want to see what the response is. Okay, now, on the other side of it, you want to pitch to streamers that have popularity, have a massive following, right? Because again, we want to be paid well, but they also need to have a problem on their hands. They need to have some problem around content they need to solve. Maybe they're the type of streamer that has overinvested in licensing and doesn't have enough original stuff. Well, how would that affect you? Well, it would affect you poorly. You would avoid them. Well, how about you have a streamer that has the opposite problem, where they've invested so much in their own stuff and they haven't licensed very much? And let's say your money's already in place. Well, that's going to help you a lot because they don't want to spend any more money. You're going to cover the bill. You're going to make the movie. Your movie looks marketable. You have the attachments in place. You have the executors in place, and your pitch was kick-ass. So yeah, we'll pick you up. We'll pick it up, put it on our streaming network. So that's the how. And I think, Nick, you did a good job of covering the what and the why. So anyway, long-winded answer to that question, but there was a lot to it. Let's go to
difficult question to answer.
Yeah. Let's It's almost like someone walking up to you and saying, "Hey, man, how do I get rich?"
Right.
Okay. Bullet number 4. Whoever asked that question, by the way, good question. Thank you for asking it. Let's see. Why don't we answer this one? What exploration rights are considered negotiable in distribution agreements, and which ones typically are not? And I'm going to make a correction here, maybe not a correction, but an adjustment. And I'm going to exchange the word exploration with exploitation. Mix. I think they mean the exhibition windows and stuff like that. So this one, Nick, why don't you jump in on this one right away?
Yeah,
I can get into it.
Yeah, I'll jump in and just, I like try to keep things simple. And I just say that everything is negotiable.
Yep.
Right. It's all on the table. I think that, because it asks the question, which ones are negotiable typically and which ones are not. Everything is negotiable. I would say, period, the end. Will you win a negotiation? It really depends on what your leverage is, right? So if the distributor has all the leverage, as in, you have no other options, right? This is the one distributor that was willing to take your film, and let's say you've let them know that, right? Then they know that they have the leverage. We're it for you, so you either take our terms or you can kick rocks, right? And good luck. But if there's some level of, there's a perception that there's competition, then I think the negotiation table becomes much more wide open. I think that some of the terms that people might think are non-negotiable, so that typically that are not, could be actually in, how long they get to license your film. Mm-hmm. They'll put that in there and they might say, yeah, that's non-negotiable, 15 years, 7 years, 10 years, whatever it is. And that might have been the case or might have been okay 5 years ago, maybe 10 years ago. But the environment has changed. The zeitgeist has changed, right? There's even films that are moving from, a Netflix to a Paramount Plus, right? Or vice versa. There's a lot of shifting and changing of hands going on here. And I think that as an independent filmmaker, you need to be able to have that flexibility as well. Another item that I think that may not be off the table, but is something that filmmakers might not consider is, what are the rights to a potential sequel, right? Or what are the rights to ancillary products that are associated with the film? I think all of those things from an exploitation perspective, all of those things are on the table for discussion. And if you don't discuss them, then the distributor will take the rights, right? Even if they have no intention of doing something with them, they have the rights and therefore they have power, right? So if, like you mentioned, Chris, if that film were to find its audience, right, either organically by, people, seeing the film and talking about the film, or through the independent filmmakers' work, right, through their own level of effort, if it gets traction, then the distributor can just say, okay, well, we'll take the rights to your T-shirts, right? We'll take the rights to your graphic novel. We'll take the rights to all of these things. And I think if the independent filmmaker is doing all the work, which is usually the case, then, you shouldn't let those rights go. Those should be yours. So I would say, I think typical, if I were to, again, answer the question directly, I think typically filmmakers believe that they do not have power. And I think that is what we're trying to kind of deal with or contend with and just say, hey, no, that's not the case. Take your power back. And if you can't get the things that you want in those exploitation rights, then do walk. Right. Yeah. There's a lot of fish out there in that sea. You just have to do more work to find the right one. So I think everything is negotiable. You just have to understand, where your leverage is and be willing to walk if you're not getting what it is that you want.
Yeah, completely agree with that. And when you're walking into a negotiation as a filmmaker, you're already kind of feeling a lot of times like a fish out of water, you're a little bit potentially, over your head. And so what I recommend is to get with the team. So sit down with your producers, director, writer, anybody that's involved sort of in the gross, the gross profit share stage, right? Maybe your EPs, obviously your investors, just sit down and say, like, you write a list of what it is you want. Like, what are you not willing to let go of? So we think of things in what do we want to get instead of what are we unwilling to do or to not get. And I think it's important to think of it the other way and write those things down and say, okay, here's our walkaway. Our walkaway is a 15-year licensing deal. Mm-hmm. That's worldwide, right? Mm-hmm. Right? So we'll take a 10-year domestic and we'll take a 3-year international. Or we'll take no international. We want to keep international rights. Or they can have international rights, we'll keep domestic, although that'd be a really tough negotiation, right?
Right.
We want all the merchandising rights.
Yep.
We want to know that if you go bankrupt, the movie flows back to us, right? That it doesn't get owned by the courts or the organization that ultimately scoops you up and buys you for pennies on the dollar as a distributor. All these things are things you can just write down and say, I want these things. And any deal that doesn't provide them, that's not a deal I'm going to take. There are typical terms in a contract. It is a 10 to 15 year licensing deal with a mini major usually, or with an independent distributor. With streaming companies, they just want to buy your film outright. Usually, there are licensing deals they make though. Those deals depend on how good your movie is and how well it performs. As far as I know, a streamer like a Netflix has all the rights to just end the licensing deal at the end of a term and just simply not renew. Yep. And those terms vary based on how strong they feel like the movie is, So, but again, that's just you accepting that outcome, right? Like that's just you saying, okay, I'll accept that. That's what I'll do. There's a great book by Chris Voss, and I'll have Elise find the name of it, but I read it when it came out about 2 years ago, and I've read tons of negotiating books and sales books and things like that. And I really find that book to be a great starter book for anyone that's trying to negotiate or learn how to negotiate, that where negotiation is sort of outside of their purview. And it's a smart idea. Like, get that skill and then use it in your world. You'll learn a lot about how deals go down just from reading the Michael Ovitz book. I mean, the first thing you'll learn is don't fuck with Michael Ovitz. The second thing you'll learn is this is like the nature of deals. And, typically in situations, the person with the purse string has the leverage to start out, but it doesn't have to stay that way. And we know that from watching sports. We know that an athlete that has the promise of turning a franchise around will get a big payday. They just will. You usually like even if you have an escort, like the oldest profession in the world, that person with the money doesn't tell them the terms.
Right.
Right. Because the leverage is on the other foot, so to speak, because of one thing. People that have the money want to hide this from you. And there are certain businesses where it's very difficult to hide it. And that one thing is, does the other side of this negotiation know what I want? Right? As an athlete, if I'm Patrick Mahomes, I know that the Kansas City Chiefs want to win a Super Bowl.
Right.
It's very clear. It's very transparent.
Yeah.
I know I'm the player that can do that.
Right.
Right.
Leverage.
If I'm Cristiano Ronaldo, I know what you want. Your club wants to not just win, but be a marketing and branding and sales phenomenon. Well, if I come there, I'm a brand. Like, I'm not just going to help you win. Like, you're going to sell more than you've ever sold before.
Right.
Right. In film, it's far more opaque. Like, every contract is different. And it's because a lot of times we come to the table and don't know what the other side wants. So do the best research you can before you go into a negotiation. Write down what it is you actually want. And then maybe even write down a secondary list of what are you unwilling to give away.
Right. Yeah.
And you'll be all right. Okay.
Yep. I'm with you.
Let's go to this one. This is interesting, Nick. Someone asked, why doesn't the film industry have more diversity? Did you know the wealthiest actor in Hollywood is Tyler Perry? Did you know that?
No, I did not know that.
Okay. Well, now you know. Did you know the third wealthiest actor in all of movies is from Bollywood?
In all of movies. Yeah.
Yeah. Third. Well, Tyler Perry too. This is all movies. Tyler Perry is a billionaire, right? At this point. Now, they all got it through ownership, which is a lesson in and of itself. Like Sylvester Stallone is still the 12th wealthiest actor in Hollywood. It's because he owns the right to Rocky, which Rocky 1 was an independent film. People forget that.
Yes, it was. Yeah.
So, Nick, what do you have to say about diversity in the industry?
Yeah, it's interesting. So, again, the question is, why doesn't it have more diversity? And there's so many ways to kind of to answer this. I mean, some part of me wants to answer the question with a question, which is really like, is it that the film industry doesn't have an adequate amount of diversity, right? Because again, the question is, why doesn't it have more? Or is it that the person asking the question does not have diverse taste, right?
Ooh.
Diverse interest.
Ooh. Maybe.
Or a diverse access to film. Because I would say that the film industry is one of the most diverse by its nature, right? We're talking about independent filmmakers. This is what we do. This is what we talk about. This is, to whom we speak on a regular basis. We've talked to, filmmakers across the gender spectrum, across the color spectrum, across the ethnicity spectrum. And we've done this over the course of, hundreds of interviews with folks. So we know how diverse it is. We've been to film festivals, right? If you physically at a film festival at any point in time, you can't help yourself but to see and to witness diversity.
Yep.
Right. It pours throughout the entire thing. So the question is that, where is this lack of diversity being perceived? So you could, of course, infer that we're talking about Hollywood. So when I think about Hollywood, and you could go to the award shows and you can see that, let's say it's primarily white, right? Let's say the majority is white, right? Mm-hmm. And that's where the diversity is lacking, is that we're not seeing, more folks of color or whatever the case is. I turn again to the person asking the question and I ask, well, how diverse is your family? Right. This isn't necessarily the lack of diversity in one's family isn't necessarily because they're purposefully excluding. Right. But I take it back. So again, if you're talking about Hollywood, where was Hollywood born? Right. Who were Hollywood's parents? And when Hollywood's parents decided to birth Hollywood, who did they want to come around and help take care of their baby? Well, the people that they knew, people that looked like them, people in their community, people they could trust. And then over time, it just continued that way, right? Not necessarily because they were seeking to exclude, but they were actually looking to include the people in their community. And then some people, it worked out. Other people, it didn't, right? But for those people who worked out, okay, well, who are their friends? Let's bring them in. So it kind of grew in what appears to be a homogeneous fashion, but I believe that it did so naturally. And of course, naturally through the zeitgeist of time, right? There were times when, hey, let's say I'm an affluent Caucasian gentleman who's part of the birth of Hollywood, and I've got this African-American friend who I trust that I really want to be a part of this. But I'm in a zeitgeist where if I put him on, that could ruin me.
Yeah.
Right. So even though I might want to, it's not the best thing for me to do. So I look at it again, if you're looking at Hollywood, now look at how it's, again, the birth of Hollywood and how it's expanded over time. I think it's just a matter of people who know each other, who trust each other, who are within the same community, who continue to expand and grow within that area, and then continue to do the same thing. We're seeing it change. The zeitgeist itself is changing and has been changing for some time. So I think in Hollywood, we are seeing more diversity. Again, that's just Hollywood. You just mentioned Tyler Perry. Tyler Perry, yes, he stepped into Hollywood, but he did that based off of all the plays that he was doing. Right. Yeah. So there's a lot of other things that he is invested in, that he is doing to amass his fortune and his place in film. You just mentioned Bollywood, right? That's outside of Hollywood. But again, the person asking the question, do they watch Bollywood films? Right. So again, I think there's so many answers that basically lead to the fact that there actually is plenty of diversity in the film industry at large. But if you're getting back to what Hollywood is showing you, then maybe, yes, there's not as much diversity as there could be or should be. But I wouldn't say that was necessarily purposeful in its intent. And I would also invite that person asking the question, or maybe there's multiple people who have the same question. I would invite them all to maybe turn your heads from the Netflix of the world or from just what you're seeing in the theater and go to independent theaters in your area. Sign on to an indie flicks, right? Sign on to, even
Sundance Channel,
Sundance Channel or IFC. Sign on to your local PBS channel, right? And watch some of the real South independent films that are, being posted there and distributed there. There's so much diversity. You just have to be willing to break yourself from that Hollywood model, which is, leverage those big trusted behemoths that are out there and find the diversity in film.
I'd also say patronize film festivals.
For sure.
When you
100%.
go there, you're going to be inundated with diversity on the screen and off the screen.
Yep.
And it's going to be a pleasure. Now, look, I'm going to play a little bit of devil's advocate here. Has Hollywood portrayed Black people and Native American people and other cultural minorities unfairly in their films? Yes, of course. Have certain groups been denied access? Absolutely. Absolutely. Throughout time. For the very reason you said.
Yep.
Hey, I've been inviting the people I know in my community in here to do this. So, from the very beginning, we look at an Oscar Michaud, we look at those early Black filmmakers that, tried to make it. Step and Fetch It isn't somebody Black folks are proud of for a variety of reasons. But at the zeitgeist at the time, within the zeitgeist at the time, I'm not sure what you expected him to be, right, if that act is what created survival. Not a great guy in relationships either. Is my understanding. But as we go along, like you said, generation after generation, the zeitgeist changes. The whole feeling towards diversity changes quite a bit. And I'll share one other hard reality with this audience. I have been all over the world in a variety of contexts, rooms, in the world of business and otherwise. And the most diverse room I've ever been in has been in the film business. And that's why part of why I love it so much, why I'm so comfortable. The hard truth is the two industries that I was able to do pretty well in before getting into film, I was almost always the only black person in the room at any given point. Imagine
I've been
that.
there. Yeah.
Imagine 20 years of working, and I can pretty much say that it's going to be me and maybe one other, but a lot of times just me. Just me. And it's weird because you start to think to yourself, I must be a special Negro. Like, how did
the chosen one?
Yeah, the chosen one. How did I sift through? Right? Like how did I get through to this group? And it's a silly thought. It's a silly thought, but it just enters your mind sometimes as you look around.
Mm-hmm. It has to.
As you look around. And one of my best friends growing up was a guy named Ross. He's white. And I used to take him to clubs that had all black people in it. And the first thing he'd say is he'd whisper in my ear, "Hey, Chris, I'm the only white guy in here." I'm like, welcome to my life, bro.
Right.
Welcome to my life. But it's normal for him.
Yeah.
And now I put him in a place where if the world turned upside down, he would have to learn to be okay with that. It wouldn't be the end of the world. It's been a great experience for me, Nick. I've had a wonderful life. I have no complaints. Okay. Do I wish more minorities were in those rooms with me? Of course I do. Of course. Were those rooms racist rooms or terrible rooms or, places where I was made to feel uncomfortable? No.
Right.
99% of the time, no. I was made to feel warm and invited and part of the group, belonging, being an integral part, being able to lead in many cases. But film in the arts by far is the most diverse workspace I've ever been in my entire life.
Yep.
Outside of being on a football team.
Right. There you go. But yeah, 100% agree, man. And I think that's the key. That's the answer in this question, and I really feel like anyone who really feels this way, isn't turning their heads to the left and to the right. Yeah. Right. Just stop focusing on what it is that necessarily Hollywood is giving you and understand that there's so much out there. Just turn your head to the left and the right and you'll find it.
One thing I've discovered about these questions and how we answer them is that we go for it in a full way. We are not very succinct. We are not succinct. We are not giving short answers. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to close this thing down.
Okay.
And then we have so many more questions. We're going to find another Indie Talk somewhere in the near future. Maybe we double up on Indie Talks and not wait 3 to 4 weeks between Indie Talks to do it.
I can't do that, man.
And we answer some of these other questions. I mean, I am looking at a list of questions here that is, seemingly endless. So, okay, we answered three of them.
Yeah, we're good.
Next time we'll try to answer 5. We'll be a little bit more succinct. Maybe we'll answer 3. It depends on how passionate we are.
We're passionate about everything.
We get passionate about these questions, and we're unable to answer them quickly. That's all I'm saying. We're not good at it.
We don't need to be good at it.
We're good. We're bad at being good. No, we're good at being good.
We're good at being bad, right?
Yeah. How do you get what I'm saying?
I get what you're saying. I'm picking up what you're throwing down. But yeah, I think we want to give our perspective. And some of the questions that we get are not as cut and dry as a short, succinct, here it is, it's A, B, or C. Oh, it's obviously C. No. It takes some expounding upon to get to where we need to go. So
yeah, and it's a kind of a taste of what you'll get from us if you go to bonsai.film and go to the partners page or go to the part of the page where we show our services. I think producer services,
workshops and panels. You know, we love to engage with filmmakers. This is what we do. You know, from the podcast itself, this is what we do through the podcast. And we get out there in the community, whether it's at these workshops, panels, seminars, film festivals. We want to engage because there's a lot of questions out there. People do have questions. Sometimes we have answers. Sometimes we have ways to lead people to the answers. But, you know, bottom line is it's all about engaging the community and getting the questions out there and just having a conversation about things. So we're game to do it. So let us know. Yeah, come to the website, check us out, ping us for the workshops, seminars, panels.
Schedule some time with us if you have these questions, and we can go even deeper and get, you know, I don't know if we get realer, but we can go into some nuanced things and some granular things that would typically be sort of inappropriate for a podcast that entertains. So yeah, make sure you go to www.bonsai.film and check us out. And even though the year is flying, Nick, like I cannot believe it's already April.
Yep.
Even though it's flying, 2022 still has so many cool things around the corner for Bonsai and for this podcast. And so for those listening, for those hanging with us and enjoy what we do and support what we do, we have so many more cool things in store from a content perspective and also from a products perspective in terms of how we work with you in the marketplace. So keep your ear to the ground for that stuff, and we'll make you aware of it when we're ready to go. Just know that behind the scenes, behind the curtains, me and Nick are chipping away at Gibraltar. So we're working as hard as we can. If you do want to send us more questions, right? We're cool with that. You can do that at contact@bonsai.film. And we answer 100% of those. So
yep, for sure.
Send us a message at contact@bonsai.film, and we will answer all those questions. You can also reach out to us at _Bonsai Creative. That's on Instagram and on Twitter. And we answer 100% of those DMs as well. A lot of people reach out to us there, and we are totally cool with it. If you want to reach out to Nick specifically, you can find him at Nick and reach out to him at nick@bonsai.film. That's his email address. He's a crazy man. He's a crazy man.
Email. That's right.
Send him an email.
Or you hit us up. Yeah, or hit me up on Instagram as well.
Or hit him up on Instagram. Yeah. And then if you want to get in touch with me directly, I love the Twitter. I'm a fan of the Twitter. So you can find me at Flame in Your Heart. You're spelled UR. So Flame in UR Heart. Or you can just search for Christopher Barkley at this point, and I will pop right up. And you can reach out to me. Yeah, me personally. You can just reach out.
Candyman style, just pop right up.
Yeah, I'll pop right up. Just say my name 3 times.
Yeah, right.
Wait, 5 times.
5 times, there you go.
And yeah, I would love it. Hit me up there, and we'll get into a little Twitter conversation there. So you can DM there or just send me a message. So with that, Nick, can you leave us with the credo?
Oh, of course. Of course. Should I take another sip of my big ass drink? Mm-hmm. And just so you know, before I go, this is some delicious tea that I'm drinking here. And I had to put that Jack in there.
You put some Jack in there?
Oh, man, I did. I did. So when you see me pouring this in this big old glass, sipping out of it, there's Jack in here.
So that's what keeps you from choking kids and women in the street when you're frustrated.
Yeah, right. It's a Jack, just hanging out with Jack.
Oh, and you know what? Before you give the credo, before I forget, true fans, for the cost of a $5 Starbucks drink, you can support this wonderful podcast. Go to bonsai.film/true fans. You can contribute there. Those who do contribute, we love you. It means the world to us. Anyone who says, hey, just go do a podcast, it's no problem, they're lying. It takes a lot of effort, a lot of thought, a lot of money, actually. So anyone that wants to do that, you can support us. Starts at $5. And those who do, again, we love you to death. We have a bi-weekly newsletter. It's incredible. I mentioned it earlier.
Yep, you do.
So go to that website again, www.bonsai.film. Drop your email in there, and you will be able to sign up for our wonderful newsletter. So I just wanted to make sure. I almost forgot to mention those, Nick. So
yep,
now,
you got it.
Now give us the creed.
And now I can tell my friends, my family, my fellow filmmakers out there in the world to be better, be creative, be engaged.
And thank you for listening. Nick, I appreciate you, man. Thanks for joining.
Yeah, man, for sure. This was awesome, dude. We're not spending the 4 weeks. Like, we're getting back on this very soon. I love it.
Me too, man. Be good.
You've been listening to the Make It podcast. To find out more information about this week's topics, including links to relevant blog posts, projects, and indie creatives, please visit our website at www.bonsai.film. If you haven't already, you can join our podcast community on Apple Podcasts or the podcast app of your choice by searching for Make It Bonsai Creative, and the show will pop right up. You now have the opportunity to support the production of this podcast. If you love Make It and are a true fan of what we're trying to accomplish in the indie film community, please visit www.bonsai.film and click Contribute. Contributions start at only $5 monthly. You can follow us on Instagram and Twitter at _Bonsai Creative, and on Facebook by searching for Bonsai Creative. You can provide feedback to us via email at contact@bonsai.film, and you can follow me, Chris, on Twitter at Flaming Your Heart. That's FLAMEINURHEART. And of course, if you're looking to take a big step towards your filmmaking success, go to www.bonsai.film and click on Services to explore a variety of offerings, from keynotes and panels to pitch readiness assessments and so much more. You have everything to gain. Until next time, be better, be creative, be engaged, and thank you for listening.